Okay, so let's talk about a book that absolutely shook up the world of personal finance, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. For millions, millions of people, this was the book that completely flipped the switch on how they thought about money. And when I say millions, I'm not kidding. We're talking over 40 million copies sold worldwide. That's not just a bestseller, right? That's a full-blown global phenomenon. Its influence is just massive. But, and this is the big question, right? Is the advice actually any good? Does this stuff that captivated all those people really hold up when you put it under a microscope? Or is there maybe something a little more complicated going on beneath the surface? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's dig in. All right, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the tale of two dads, the whole premise of the book. Then, we'll dive into why it feels like you're getting some secret wisdom. After that, we'll talk about the advice without action problem. Then, the really interesting part, the hidden sales pitch. And finally, we'll look at the hero's flawed journey, the author's own story. Okay, first up, a tale of two dads. This really is the heart of the whole book, you know? It's built around this big philosophical clash between two very different father figures in Kiyosaki's life. So the book creates this incredibly simple but really powerful contrast. You've got poor dad on one side, the smart, highly educated guy who's supposedly clueless about money, and on the other side, you've got rich dad, the street-smart, risk-taking entrepreneur who gets how the world really works. It's a genius storytelling hook, for sure. But let's take a closer look at the guy he calls poor dad. Because here's the thing, the man Kiyosaki labels poor dad, who was his actual real-life father, was anything but a failure. This guy got a scholarship to Stanford, earned a PhD, and became the head of education for the entire state of Hawaii. By any normal standard, this was a hugely successful, highly respected professional. And when Kiyosaki supposedly asked him, "Hey, why aren't you rich?" His dad's answer wasn't some excuse. It was a choice. He said he just loved to teach. For him, success wasn't just about dollars and cents. It was about doing something he was passionate about making a contribution. Okay, now let's contrast that with a quote from Rich Dad. When he's asked why he pays his workers less than he could, his reason isn't some nugget of financial genius, it's just, "I don't have to." And that right there shows a huge moral gap between these two men that the book kind of sweeps under the rug to focus only on the money. And this whole setup leads perfectly into our next point, this powerful feeling that you're getting some kind of secret wisdom. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is an absolute masterclass in making you feel like you're finally being told the secrets the rich don't want you to know. And let's be honest, that's a super powerful psychological trick, right? It plays on that feeling that a lot of us have, that the wealthy have some kind of secret playbook, and if we could just read it, we'd be set. The book positions itself as that exact playbook. The problem is, a lot of this secret wisdom comes from boiling down really complex ideas into something maybe a little too simple. A perfect example is taxes. The book basically says taxes are just a punishment for being productive. But the reality, taxes are what pay for, well, everything. Roads, schools, hospitals, the military, the whole shebang. To just call them a penalty is frankly pretty misleading. Which brings us to probably one of the biggest knocks against the book, what I call advice without action. It's jam-packed with these amazing, powerful-sounding ideas, but when it comes to an actual concrete plan, there's not much there. Think about its most famous line. You've all heard it. Don't work for money, make money work for you. Wow. It sounds so deep, right? It's the kind of quote that makes you want to stand up and completely change your life. But here's the million-dollar question. How? How does someone who's literally living paycheck to paycheck actually do that? The book is aimed right at them, but it doesn't give them a realistic roadmap to get started. It's like telling someone to climb Mount Everest, but not giving them a map or any gear. And when the book does give you examples, they sound less like a strategy and more like a magic trick. Get this. There's a story about a house flip he supposedly did in just 5 hours. It involves borrowing a couple grand, finding someone in foreclosure, and then selling the house for a massive profit before the first deal even officially closes. It's a lot. And here's the kicker. People have looked for proof. We're talking journalists, investigators, even some of his old business partners. They've scoured public records, looking for any documentation to back up these incredible stories. And they found nothing. Zero. No evidence that these things happen the way he says they did. Okay, let's take another one of his big controversial ideas. Your house is not an asset. Whoa. That one statement just blows up decades of conventional wisdom that says buying a home is how you build wealth. But again, after dropping a bombshell like that, the book just kind of walks away. It doesn't give a regular family a real practical alternative. So if your house isn't an asset, where are you supposed to live? How are you supposed to build equity? You're left with way more questions than answers. And this lack of clear answers leads us right to our fourth point, the hidden sales pitch. Because, you see, it becomes pretty clear pretty fast that this book isn't just a book. It's the very top of a sales funnel designed to get you, the reader, to become a high-paying customer. Think about it. The book gives you all these big ideas, but no details. So you're left wanting more, right? Well, conveniently, the real secrets, the how-to part, is available in his other products. We're talking about expensive seminars and courses that, back in 2010, could run you as much as $45,000. And this is where it gets really concerning. Hidden camera investigations revealed some pretty high-pressure sales tactics. At these seminars, people were actually told to get on the phone with their credit card companies right then and there to raise their credit limits so they could afford to buy these super expensive courses. I mean, going into debt to learn how to get out of debt? It's a bit much. So that brings us to our final point, a hero's flawed journey. This is about the piece of Kiyosaki's own life story that, funnily enough, doesn't make it into the book. Remember how the book portrays poor dad as this timid guy who's afraid of risk? Well, the truth is a little different. Back in the 70s, it was actually his poor dad who took a massive risk. He mortgaged the family home to give his son $100,000 to start a business. And that business? A nylon wallet company? It went bankrupt a few years later. And that is just the ultimate irony, isn't it? The man who gets criticized for having a poor mindset actually made a huge entrepreneurial bet on his son and lost. You can make a pretty strong case that the biggest financial mistake his poor dad ever made wasn't his safe job. It was funding the very person who would one day write a book calling him poor. So where does that leave us? Look, Rich Dad, Poor Dad is an amazing story. There's no doubt about that. But its legacy is complicated. It absolutely opened the eyes of millions of people, but it also boiled down complex things a little too much, told stories that can't be proven, and ultimately acted as a gateway to some very, very expensive products. So maybe the next time you're looking for financial advice, it's worth asking yourself a simple question. Am I buying real wisdom, or am I just buying a really, really good story?